Hello and welcome to our CIONET wine tasting in the UK alongside our friends at IVANTI. Before we head into the wonderful bottles that you'll have next to you, no doubt, and the wine tasting notes and the instructions, etc., I just wanted to go through a bit about what's going to happen within the meeting so everybody's fully aware. So as you can see on the slide there, if you could go into, because obviously primarily it is a networking event and an experience share, rename yourself with first name and company. There will be times within the meeting that we'll mute all when we have our speaking sessions, but there's always opportunity to place a question in the chat or of course use the raise the hand button. The recording of the session will be recorded for any of the absentees from our member side that wanted to join just for the conversations, and feel free to switch between this speaker view and the gallery view, of course. Like every CIONET event, we will be voting for the most valuable participant towards the end, of which I will let you know when that message will come out. It will come out via text message, but if you don't have it, we'll also try and put it into the chat for you guys as well. It's really feedback for us, so if you can fill that out, it'd be great. And the most valuable participant, as a lot of you know, gets a charitable contribution. So as we're doing introductions as we go along, because people will be joining the session at certain times, and before I hand over to our wine expert Adrian, I just wanted to thank Nigel Seddon and Daniel Bolton, our speakers for the session, Nigel being from IVANTI and Daniel being from Kingston University, who immediately after, not the champagne, the English sparkling wine is opened, they'll be providing a good insight into what's happened with not just Daniel at Kingston University, but also some of IVANTI's primary clients. And again, there'll be a question and answer sessions throughout the session, as well as a quality, wonderful chaired roundtable session by Roger from about 6:30 onwards. So relax, enjoy. It's meant to be not another Zoom call, it's meant to be something to have a bit of fun with, as well as to be well informed in good company. So without further ado, I'll hand you across to Adrian Bucknell, our wine expert for the event.
Excellent. Good evening, everybody. My name's Adrian. I run a company called Wine on Earth, and we specialize in wine tasting. So hopefully everyone has got their bottle of Henna's English sparkling wine to hand. I'm sure some of you have been tempted to open it. Some of you may already have. But if you haven't, let's everyone get their bottle. We'll open it together and we'll raise a toast before we start. So I'll run through how to open it properly. If you want to damage your own chandeliers or light bulbs, then be my guest. But whenever you're opening sparkling wine, always keep your thumb on the top of the cork. So never leave it go. Okay, so take the foil off and keep your cork, keep your thumb on top. Then the wire bit is called the cage. So unwrap that, keeping your thumb on top, and then twist the bottle, not the cork. It gives you much greater control. Should hopefully stop you soaking your keyboard or your laptop, whatever you have to hand. And then pour carefully. The advantage of a virtual tasting is that you can go and top yourself up as many times as you want throughout the course of the evening. So no one's judging, no one's watching you. That's the dangers of my job, is that I can top myself up throughout the course of an evening. Some are more proficient than others. I'm not sure whether that's because they've had more experience of opening lots of sparkling wine. Okay, I think most people have got it opened. So, cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Here's to a very enjoyable evening. Enjoy the wine and the conversation.
Cheers.
Okay, so what we have in front of us is an English sparkling wine. So, as you know, you can't call it champagne, although in everything but name it is. In fact, the English invented champagne, much to the French's chagrin. So back in 1662, a gentleman called Christopher Merritt documented how champagne was produced. The reason why England was responsible for inventing champagne is that we had stronger glass bottles. Dom Perignon in France was trying to stop bottles from exploding. We harnessed it and made the first purposeful sparkling wine. Okay, so very much similar in style to a champagne. Same grape varieties, Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, similar soil type. So the terroir, the place where it's from, the grapes, etc., very similar in the south of England as it is in Champagne in northern France. So there are lots and lots of world-class English sparkling wines out there, which I'm sure some of you have had the chance to taste a lot of. And if you haven't, next time you think about going for a champagne, if you have an English alternative, then give it a go, okay? What on the nose with sparkling wine, what you tend to get, or what I tend to find on this, by all means, shout out or join in or write down in the chat. On the nose, lots of bready, biscuit, brioche, quite rich, quite yeasty, just like a champagne is. If you like Proseccos, for example, they're much lighter, much fresher, nowhere near as broad and rich as a champagne-style wine. The English sparkling wine is made in the same way as champagne, using the same grapes. So the second fermentation that gives the wine its bubbles happens within the bottle. Okay, so this wine spent 3 years in the bottle before it was disgorged, before it was opened. So a long, long time. In champagne, you only need to be 15 months. So this wine, its dark color, its broadness, its richness comes from extended time in the bottle. Anyone have any questions on the first wine? Who likes it?
It's very nice.
Yeah, lots of thumbs up. Have most of you had English sparkling wine before?
Yeah.
Yeah, yes and no. So if you haven't, this is a very good introduction to it. It's a multi-award winning. Hennes is based in East Sussex, set up by an ex-Formula One engineer. Won lots of wines, beat Champagne at their own game, which they're very quick to tell everyone in lots and lots of press releases. But enjoy this as we go throughout the evening. If you have any questions about this wine, the next wine when I speak to you will be a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, and we will finish with a world-beating Grand Reserve Rioja. Okay, so if you have any questions about sparkling wine, about anything else at all, please do ask. I'm not used to being succinct. I'm trying to be succinct today. So if you have any questions, put it in the chat or ask me next time and I will be more than happy to answer them.
Adrian, I've got a question.
Yes, of course.
So it tastes very good, and I've had English sparkling wine before, and I've heard that there are these great wines, but why does that not flood our supermarkets and everything else? Why is everything dominated by Prosecco, Cava and everything else we sell?
It comes down to economics at the end of the day, and so unfortunately, if you see an English sparkling wine, it's never going to be the cheapest. It's always going to be £20 plus. Cost of land and the cost of labour, the two main drivers for the price of a bottle of wine, and both of those, as you know, in the south of England, are expensive. When you make a Prosecco, you make it in a big stainless steel tank rather than a small bottle. Therefore, you can make a lot of it far more economically than you can an English sparkling wine. Cava is the anomaly. Cava is made like champagne in Spain, yet still is not overly expensive. Cava's marketing department needs a good kick up the proverbial to sort of get it on an equal footing with Prosecco. English sparkling wine is going to be marketed as a niche, prestige, premium, expensive, desirable quality. It's never going to be made in big enough numbers, but it should be judged on quality next to champagne, and certainly more favourably to other competitors around the world.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
And before we hand over to Roger, thanks for the question, Ian. That's very informative. I just wanted to say there's a gentleman here who's named himself Charlotte, and his name is Jamie Atkins, and I just wanted to say
Sorry about that. My daughter's just finished on here. That's why I was late.
It's his wedding anniversary today, so his wife has let him join our meeting. I just want to say happy wedding
anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
Jamie, Charlotte.
Adrian, I'd like to know if you ever told anyone French that Englishmen invented champagne, and how have they reacted?
I have, and there's typical French gesturing and muttering under their breath. They didn't go as far as burning anything or going on strike, but they were generally disgruntled. You know, the French like to shrug their shoulders a little bit. Apologies to anyone who is French or French origin on the call, but they can't argue with history, although it was only really proved in the mid-'80s. So it's a recent bit of proven history that the French aren't too happy about. They built their whole mystique around the history of champagne, etc., etc. So yeah, it's something that if you have a French colleague, it's one to wind them up with.
Adrian, can I say I know the story from having a French wife, but also years ago she worked for the Brittany Regional Chamber of Trade and Commerce.
Okay.
And she said, don't worry, we're sorting it out because of global warming. It's getting too warm to have the vineyards for champagne grape in France. So really, we're buying the English vineyards.
That's
So
right.
that any decent English champagne is going to be French in the future.
Well, there is certainly some truth in that. Global warming will do the English wine industry a world of good in the next 50 years, if not anything else. But look out for the future. Hey, Roger, I will hand over to you before wine chat dominates the rest of the proceedings.
Thank you very much, Adrian, and again, very warm welcome to all of you here. A number of faces that I recognize well from our traditional physical events, and I hope we can make this as interactive, as informative as we do around the table when we meet each other. And the purpose of these evenings is really to exchange experience, and hopefully you will go back after this session thinking, I really learned something from other people. We're not living in isolation here. Everyone else has got the same problems, but some of us have got some great solutions as well. So we want to actually explore the challenges, which have been enormous in the last 6 months, but also, you know, where stability is being achieved, where real breakthroughs have actually happened. So firstly, thank you so much to IVANTI for sponsoring the session. And I know that Daniel Bolton, who's joined us, will be extremely interesting to hear about his experiences in the education sector, dealing with a well-known university and how he's been able to navigate really the last several months. And equally, Nigel Seddon, who's actually the Vice President of Northern Europe for IVANTI. I'm sure Nigel has a lot of stories to tell about clients that he's experiencing day to day, their challenges, their problems, but equally the opportunities that they've generated over time. So perhaps if we can go firstly to Daniel, to ask Daniel, what has been your journey in the last couple of months? What have the challenges been like, and where have you found some good solutions?
Hi everybody. So I guess we've gone from a very traditional IT estate where all of our devices and users it was very much a campus-centric organisation. We are an ex-polytechnic, so we are very much a teaching university, so a bums on seats. So we expect our students to come on site to do practical lessons with us. We have, you know, around about 3,500 to 4,000 student-facing devices. And straight away from the end of March, we went from 99% of our users now working off campus. So a huge change in the logistical challenges of education. Luckily, we were just coming to the end of our academic year, heading into that exam and assessment period. So a lot of the practical teaching had started to come to an end anyway. So from a timing point of view, it could have been worse. What we have seen is that, or what we're going to see is that 50 to 60% of our students from September are going to be off campus, so distance learning or remote teaching. We're having to go down a blended model where we are going to still have to open up the campuses and some of our labs, but there are going to be students that are not able to travel, especially our 3,000 international students that we have at the university. So it's certainly going to have a massive impact to us. From a technology point, sorry.
Dan, sorry, we've got obviously a long-standing partnership here, and we've talked at length about this, but one of the interesting facts you were talking about the other day was the impact on universities and the fact of exchange students or foreign students, and that, you know, some universities rely on a lot greater than others. How do you see that impacting over the longer term?
Well, absolutely. So, I mean, the fact, especially international students, they pay the big, you know, they pay the big fees, and we are expecting that we are going to see a shortfall of between 15 and 20 million pounds from September moving forwards. That's a huge sum of money to suddenly lose from an operational budget, and we're not alone. This applies to all the universities. So it's really about trying to find what is our competitive edge, or what still makes us an attractive university in the long term for students to actually want to spend that sort of money for this blended delivery of content. So I think we as a university, we're not just looking at this as a tactical problem or a short-term strategic problem. We're saying, well, what are the opportunities in this for us? How can we digitize the university how can we maybe take a step change from being a what I know the Vice Chancellor doesn't like me using this term, but being an analog university and moving into being a digital university across the board. And that's a huge change. It's not, some of the challenges with that is it's not just technology, it's a cultural change as well. It's about getting academics to prepare their lectures in a different way. It's about getting students to interact with services a different way. So those are some of the things that we've got to try and come up with the solution for at the moment. And technology is a huge element of that. Going from a traditionally managed device to a device that never comes on site, how do we make sure that our staff's laptops are compliant from a security point of view? So we're having to come up with new and wonderful ways, and that's, I guess that's why we are working with Ivanti. We are adopting Ivanti technology, Microsoft technology, and other solutions from VMware around virtual desktops and so forth to actually enable this blended working blended teaching model going forward.
One of the things you mentioned the other day, Dan, was how quickly after the pandemic hit you had to move to a remote environment, and you've got some numbers on how quick that has, and also the fact that a number of devices went off site, but also a number of devices stopped activating as well, and how you tried to manage that.
Absolutely. So we had some discussions about, you know, what's going to happen if we go into lockdown, how will we cope? And that was early one week. Then the last Friday before lockdown, the university made a decision to close campuses and everybody would work remotely from the following Monday. So we had a weekend to try and prepare. And we've got a lot of staff that's still a desktop based, so it's how do we provide them with laptops, or how can they use their own devices at home to access university resources in a secure and compliant way. So those are some of the decisions that we had, and what we found after about one to 2 months of a lot of these laptops being off-site, because we never thought of a device being off-site for any prolonged period of time, we never thought about device activation. When you think about Windows activation, Windows, like a traditional IT organization, will have a Microsoft KMS server where a Windows device will activate against that license server. Going off-site, that's not an option. So we had to think of a way with a traditionally managed desktop. Well, how do we actually change the licensing on a desktop? SCCM is going to be no help for us. We hadn't done mobile device management on our Windows fleet at that stage. Well, not in production anyway, but we had Ivanti Cloud, or what's now become Ivanti Neurons, and that allowed us to do that over-the-air management. We were able to very, very quickly run a command on all of our laptop fleet that were off-site, and we proactively activated all those devices remotely without the users having to ring up. We had about 10 users complain about activation issues, and we created a workflow within minutes, and I would say within the first few days all of those laptops were activated, and straight away that the burden on the service desk, the help desk, was just gone immediately. And one of the good things about the workflow, we actually logged these activations as well, so we've got an audit trail of devices that have contacted the university to actually activate.
And also, just, you know, moving forward, you know, I know you haven't got a big team. I know you've always said, you know, gosh, we struggle with it, the amount of resource that we've got. How do you see this sort of, what does the new norm look like for you in the university world? How do you see any changes or not? How do you see the pattern moving forward?
Absolutely. So you are right. We are a small IT team. So across IT as an organisation, we have 90 people. But in terms of true operational IT admins, so the techies, there's just under 20 of us, and that's for cloud, on-premises, desktop, security, networking. So we've always been very, very reliant on automation. And again, we used to use a tool called Res Automation, which actually Ivanti acquired a number of years ago. And if it can be automated, if it's a task that can be scripted through a PowerShell script, through a shell script, through whatever means an API, then we will automate it. And our approach at the time was very much looking at what is our most common tickets on the service desk, and then what can we turn into an automated action. And likewise, we look at our technical processes of provisioning a VM in the cloud, provisioning a VM on site, provisioning a desktop. What can we automate? For example, 80% of our desktop fleet is now re-imaged remotely without anybody having to go and visit. And in the education space, that has traditionally been quite tricky, especially when you've got to work on timetabling. So these are some of the things that we've had to have as from a challenging point of view and some of the things we've done to remediate those issues. Moving forward, it's going to be more of the same, but a lot harder. When you've got your devices off site, you are truly, truly reliant on remote support. You're truly reliant on automation and over-the-air management. Those shackles of a traditional on-premise managed IT estate, they have to go, and now you have to start developing for this truly mobile world. And the concept of we used to have this concept of a university without walls. Now we have to come up with a concept of a university without a campus. That's essentially where we're moving to in the future. What do I think the next norm will be? I think remote working, remote for staff is going to be huge. The university had big plans to buy a new building in Kingston for staff offices. That's completely gone now. And I suspect what you'll see is buildings and possibly even whole campuses might start closing as we think that we can do remote working in a slightly different way.
How much of your estate is on premise and how much of it's in the cloud?
So I would say that so in terms of virtual machines, so we vast majorities are on site. So we have about 800 virtual machines on site. We have about 50 to 100 in the cloud. Saying that, we are just starting to move our VDI environment into the cloud, so we'll be able to provision up to 3,500 desktops in the cloud in the next few weeks. In terms of corporate systems, so things like HR, finance, student records, the virtual learning environment, that's all cloud-based already. So I would say about 90% of our enterprise apps are cloud-based or SaaS-based as it stands now. And we're moving to more and more of a cloud delivery model moving forwards. I mean, from our point of view, it's not just about, I mean, there are some cost savings involved with the cloud, but we, you know, at the end of the day, you can knock up a server on premise a lot cheaper than you can knock one up in the cloud. Where the benefits come in is the fact that how quickly we can scale, how quickly we can build in the cloud, and the agility behind it. If a researcher needs a VM or a machine with 64 gig of RAM to do some processing for a 24-hour, 48-hour a week period, are we going to buy a £3,500 desktop to provision in, or are we going to spin up a VM in the cloud? So it gives us that agility and the ability to burst very, very quickly for a very small use case. And it also allows us to do, we don't do chargeback, but we do scare back and show back. And it allows us to then go back to the business and say, well, this is how much IT you're consuming. And that's what we've tried to do over the years, move away from this concept of a user-centric IT model to a service-centric. So it really does allow us to sort of say, well, what is the value of a given service to the university? We're not quite there yet for some things, but the more we move into the cloud, the easier that becomes for the organization. Yeah. And we have shrunk as an IT team. We don't have those data center admins anymore. We have the Windows guys, the VMware guys that are also doubling up as a data center guy. And we are, one of our mission visions over the next few years is to effectively close down one of our data centers, so we just have one. But primary services won't even be hosted on that anymore. Again, we can't achieve this with the staff numbers that we have. We have to rely on automating this process, which is, you know, it doesn't matter how good your automation tool is, you still have to develop these things to work for your use case. So choosing the right tool has been very important for us.
So I have a question. So putting availability to one side, what KPIs are you sort of using sort of to optimize either the IVANTI influenced services and or the core infrastructure on which it relies?
So it's interesting. We've been having a conversation recently with the CFO around KPIs, because we as an organisation, that we have some organisational KPIs, and we've been asking lately, why don't you ever want to know anything about IT? We've got such good data, but I think we've got, like I say, we're coming from this analog mindset as an organisation, and I think to them IT is just there. It's just something that has to happen, and it's like water out of a tap or a utility. But now we're starting, the senior management team, the organisation is changing, and you're starting to get some people that are a bit more tech savvy. So in terms of KPIs, it's really we're very much driven around user experience. So we've got some fundamental KPIs like device performance. So we need to know, is a device performing, because we're measured on performance. Students fill out a national student survey every year, and prospective students look at that survey. So if a student's not getting good user experience, it then falls back on the university, and it can impact us in the future around recruitment. So we need to make sure that from a computing point of view, they've got the best possible experience. In terms of hosting KPIs, then that's, at the moment, we don't really do KPIs. It's more around trend analysis and capacity management KPIs. But in terms of performance, we do a few costings. How much would it cost to host something on premise versus the cloud? And what are the performance? What's the uptime of those environments? But I wouldn't say we have a real tangible KPI at this stage. I guess we're maturing as an IT organization as well.
Do you have any...
Sorry, after you go.
I was just going to quickly ask, do you have any KPIs around egress, data egress, getting the data back from the cloud?
Not KPIs. We have risks and we have concerns. So through various things. So an example, we use Box as our cloud storage for collaborative storage, and we got a very, very, very good deal a number of years ago. We were one of the first early adopters with Box, and we very, very quickly, within 2 years, we went from no storage capacity to over 200 terabytes of storage in Box. Our contract comes to an end in 2 years' time, and we reckon it's a 2 to 3 year migration project to get that data off into another cloud provider. Now, in education, the natural cloud provider of choice is Microsoft with OneDrive, because it's just included in it as a part of our license at no extra cost. So we are just doing the project now because you know, it's frightening. And the biggest risk that we have as an organization is cloud in some ways from a data point of view. Because once your data is not in your data center anymore and it is in a cloud provider, then there is an immediate risk about how do you get that data back. Interestingly, we are literally just interviewing for a vendor contracts manager for IT to work in IT, and we used to have one, but we are now looking for one who specializes in cloud. And this is so we can firm up our contracts with all the cloud partners. Again, like I say, we've used the cloud for a number of years, but we're really starting to ramp up what we do with it now.
Do you manage to ensure that your cloud provider hasn't included in the small print something like they're harvesting the data that you have with them and they're creating value from it, but that data should of course be yours and any value that comes from it?
Absolutely. So it's a shame I couldn't bring our data governance manager onto this call, because that is his sole job, is to have a look at all cloud.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And there have been quite a few vendors that have tried to catch us out on that one. And when you see tender, especially in public sector, the tendering process can be a big process. And some of the feedback you get from vendors, they do try to blind you with science a lot of the time. And that's something.
And the worst example, yes. So the worst example I ever saw is my local rural free hospital in the northwest of London. When I joined their board as a non-exec, I picked up issues like they had a contract for an American company to do some research for them on liver disease, and they gave all their 30 years or so of data on liver disease with patients to that company, and the company made a fortune out of what else they did with that data when they'd finished the rural-free contract. So they'd learned the hard way, if you provide data to anybody, there must be restrictions on when and how they can use it.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that is a big section in our tender requirements document that we have. Absolutely,
good.
Yeah, we have been caught out in the past. We have actually been caught out in the past, so we've learned the hard way.
Good.
But Danny, how did you find the move from Res to the Ivanti suite? Because we're in the process of moving away from Res.
So I'm a diehard Res fan. I remember putting it in the university in 2011, I think it was, and we're still very much with their user environment piece, the workspace Ivanti workspace control, and we about a year ago we started piloting what was the AppSense product portfolio. It's a strange transition. It's a very different product set. It's in some ways the AppSense tool set is a lot more advanced. It's much better, and I have a feeling that's where the vast majority of the development from Ivanti will go. And I can see, you know, they're going to start supporting things like Azure Active Directory soon. So from an over-the-air management, as I was just talking about, it gives you a much better experience. But they have also recently announced that they are going to still continue to support the Res portfolio. So we're still having those sort of conversations. Well, we're not really in a rush to migrate at the moment, so we've kind of put it on the back burner. We need to focus on reopening the university for teaching, and then we're going to revisit it. However, we have adopted some of the other platforms, such as the application control from AppSense. So we don't users can't have admin privileges anymore. So we use privilege access management through what was the AppSense product, and that's something that the Res suite didn't do a very good job of. So, but we've got an Ivanti ELA, so I guess we've got full reign of the product set, which is quite handy for us. That answers your question.
Thank you.
Great. And there's a lot going on in the chat as well, but I'm conscious of time and keeping to schedule. So there's a lot more to be answered, and we will cover absolutely everything. But I wanted to hand back over to Adrian, and I know we've had a couple of new people join us. Of course, we're going to do some introductions in the official roundtable session, but if I can hand it back over to Adrian and thank Daniel and Nigel and Roger for that fabulous session there. If Adrian can bring us up to speed on what we've got next, then that'd be superb.
That's great, Sean. So the next one we're going to open, so hopefully you have to hand, is the Grey Wacky Wild Sauvignon Blanc. So this is one of New Zealand's highest rated white wines, made by arguably New Zealand's greatest winemaker. So Grey Wacky is run by a winemaker called Kevin Judd, who I'm sure lots of you on the call have heard and tasted Cloudy Bay. He was the winemaker of Cloudy Bay for its first 25 years. So Kevin Judd was responsible for the success of New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc worldwide. Up until 1985, everyone was enjoying nice genteel Sancerre Puy Fumé, which was refined and elegant if you liked it, or you couldn't smell too much if you didn't. New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc came along, was a bit like Sauvignon Blanc on steroids. Came along, hit you over the head. You've got passion fruit, mango, pineapple, citrus fruit, lots and lots to smell, lots and lots to taste. So Kevin Judd was the winemaker for Cloudy Bay for the first 25 years, and then went off and started Grey Wacky. This is their wild Sauvignon Blanc, so it's a bit different to their normal Sauvignon Blanc. So if everyone has a glass poured, in general for a Sauvignon Blanc, this wine has slightly more color. It's a bit more golden. So the reason why it's called wild Sauvignon is that it's made from wild yeast, indigenous yeast, which gives the wine more complexity. When you make a white wine, you normally ferment it in stainless steel for 2 to 4 weeks. This wine was fermented in old oak barrels for 6 months. So a long, slow fermentation, which introduces different nuances of aroma, of flavor, of texture, of balance. Okay, so what do people smell on the wine? So I've suggested that you might have passion fruit and citrus, and this wine might be a bit smoky, might be a bit flinty. Anyone have anything else?
For me, passion fruit, yes.
Yeah, good. So for those of us who remember lilt or mbongo as children, then those kind of tropical fruit salad is what you typically get in a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. That's to do this wine a disservice. This wine is grown up New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. So this wine, as much as being about aroma and flavor, is as much about texture. Okay, so for those on the call who like white Burgundy, if you like a Puy Frisé or a nice Chablis, it's all about texture rather than abundance of flavor. This wine, 6 months fermenting in old oak barrels, should give the wine a much rounder, a much softer, almost spicier mouthfeel. New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc's been extremely popular in being lots and lots of fruit. What they haven't had is much differentiation between some of the producers. So both wild ferment with Grey Wacky, and also Cloudy Bay do a wine called Tomoko, which is similar in style. Premium, more expensive than the basic stuff. Made to age, made to go with food. So for those of you who like eating Asian food, if you like Chinese, if you like Thai style food, then something with a bit of spice will match this wine very, very well. If you like your spice, your curry's a bit hotter, then don't spend good money on a bottle of wine. If your mouth's on fire, you won't taste anything. So you'll have something sparkling. Go back to the English sparkling wine if you must. In terms of flavor, in terms of texture, what you're looking for is balance and complexity. If after this call you can't remember a word I've said, just say a wine smells complex, move on. Everyone thinks you know what you're talking about and you don't need to go any further. That's what you're looking for in a good wine. Is you might like passion fruit, you might like alcohol, but alcoholic passion fruit cordial is not the most complex wine in the world. So you're looking for texture, you're looking for structure, you're looking for balance, you're looking for length of finish. How long after you finish tasting it can you still taste it for? And generally, the longer the length of finish, the better the quality of the wine. Any questions on this one? I know there were lots of questions last time and I had to cut you short, so I'll open the questions now.
What is it about Marlborough?
So largely climate. So if you go to Marlborough, it's at the top of the South Island, New Zealand. 300 days of sunshine. It's not particularly hilly. It's rolling hills, if that. So the main difference between the Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand compared to one from Sancerre is largely down to sunshine. The more sunshine you get, the riper your grapes get, the more sugar, the more alcohol, the much more ripe and tropical fruit you get. Whenever you smell or taste the wine, the building blocks of what you smell and taste start at the grape variety. So if you went to a vineyard in Marlborough and tasted one of the grapes, it would have elements of passion fruit or etc. in it. No one goes and adds some additives to it to flavor a wine. If you do that, you'll end up in jail. So with this case, it's largely down to climate. Sauvignon Blanc gives you something, and then climate changes it. If we had a Sancerre next door, you might notice similarities, but I expect this one to be much punchier, much stronger, much more pungent. Any other questions?
Other than sort of Googling, how do you know what food to pair the wine with? What would you pair this with?
So typically, as a rule of thumb, the most important thing to remember is try and match the weight of the wine to the weight of the food you're serving it with. So whilst it's not always white wine with fish and red wine with meat, if you're having a fairly light, crisp white wine, you'd match that with some fairly plain white fish. If you're having a big red wine, then look for some fairly meaty steak or meat. But if you're having something in between, so if you're having an oak Chardonnay, a white Burgundy, for example, or if you're having a Pinot Noir, a red Burgundy, you might well have that with roast chicken, roast turkey, a lighter style of meat, or maybe a richer style of seafood, something like a salmon fillet. Okay, so you can have light red wines with meatier fish if you want. So this wine, because it's quite strong, will stand up to stronger flavors. So I think if you had chili king prawns, if you had some sea bass done with some lemongrass and ginger, this would go really well. It's got enough body to stand up to some texture, but it's got lots and lots of flavor. Equally, if you don't particularly like your partner's cooking, then get a bottle of this. You won't taste their food, no one's offended, and everyone's happy. So it's a win-win situation all around.
Wish you'd mentioned that when I was married, Adrian. That would have been really helpful.
It's never too late. It's never too late.
So Adrian, do you match your food to your wine or your wine to your food?
That's a good question, and it does depend. So sometimes I'll have my eye on a bottle of wine and think, okay, I really want to taste that. What have I got in the fridge, in the larder, in the cupboards that will do that justice? Sometimes it's obviously the reverse. You know what you're having for dinner, especially if it's a dinner party, and you plan your wines accordingly. Food and wine matching enhances both experiences, but you don't have to be a slave to it. So if, for example, you fancy a white wine and you know you're having some meat later on, then maybe whilst you're having the pair of them together, it's not going to be the greatest, but enjoy your wine beforehand, enjoy your dinner, and then come back to your wine afterwards. So whilst I think together they work better, you don't have to be sort of a slave to the dogma of food and wine matching. But yeah, I do both, and sometimes the wine, I have to admit, Baz, wins out.
And that was always my criticism for years of business travel of British Airways. I'd say, why do you give me the wine menu before you give me the food menu? I want to choose my food, then the appropriate wines.
Exactly, and unfortunately these days, Renato, I mean, British Airways used to spend a lot of money on wine consultants to go to pair the right wines. Unfortunately, I think certainly going forward, you won't see that again. So you may well be having Blossom Hill with your filet mignon on British Airways.
Well, my compromise was they'd always have to give me a bottle of each one so I could choose later.
Well, there you go. We've all learned something from Renato that.
Now we're learning about the quality of your air travel, aren't we?
Exactly. So, Adrian, I'm going to bring everyone back onto the subject at hand. I know that we could spend a lot of time talking about wines. Baz, you asked a question about wines, but I'm going to really ask you a question about government. I mean, this pandemic, I guess, has challenged massive numbers of employees. Was government really prepared technologically for home working?
I think the answer is simply no. However, what I would say is we adapted really quickly. It was shockingly quick, and they say things take time in public sector. But I have to say, DEFRA responded in a remarkably short period of time. We had literally hundreds of new PCs that need to be laptops that need to be configured and sent out, and there was lots of choices on technology and how we would do this. Home delivery, of these things, which was unusual. Home setup, configuration, again, unusual. And I think I don't think I've seen DEFRA deliver anything else as quick in the 5 years I've been here. You know, I was really shocked that we reacted so quickly. And yes, it's made a massive difference to the way we work. I think, as I may have mentioned in one of our previous sessions, DEFRA saved nearly £2 million on rail travel alone in the first 2 months of this pandemic. We've got offices that are now clearly empty. And the question is, do we really need all these estates across? Don't buy into any commercial landlord or stocks, whatever you do, any of you. It's not going to be worth too much in the next 5 to 10 years, I should think, as people suddenly realize they don't need all these buildings. And I think actually this whole notion that you had to work on site has been dismissed now. There's very few roles that actually require us to have staff on site.
So Basra, when you mentioned the response was very rapid, how did you fill the gap? I mean, what specifically happened to...
Lots of angry phone calls, I think, is the response to that. There was a lot of calls to the service desk. There's a lot of teams, new starters who were waiting for kit for weeks, literally. You know, it took us about 4 weeks, 5 weeks to be able to adapt to this. We had people from our suppliers working on site at various office locations, configuring 10, 20 laptops each a day and getting them shipped out. It was, well, I think the suppliers really stepped up as well. So yes, I think there was a lot of angry project leads who had staff who couldn't use them. There's our contact centers, which needed to be completely revamped to allow them to work from home. It's something they've never done in the past. They never wanted to do in the past. Though I did advise them to start looking at that 2 years ago. They are now all working from home. So you know, it's been quite a rapid change.
And do you think this this mentality will persist? I mean, this is good. It sounds like good news. The government need to move faster. Has it broken some barriers here?
So there's lots of secret squirrel projects around that particular question at the moment. It impacts people's ways of working, their terms and conditions, how we track them, how we do performance management, and all of these other wonderful things that people don't really understand. You know, traditional line managers are used to seeing their staff, seeing their behaviors on a day-to-day basis. Well, how do you know someone's actually really sat behind their desk all day, and so on and so on? We're not evasive like some consultancies who will install software on your laptops to literally see you actually sat there in front of it all day and track how many loo breaks or how many lunch breaks you take. We can't do that sort of behavior. You know, it might get proposed, we don't know. So, you know, there's many ways that this impacts the day-to-day workings of any department or any organization. They just haven't been thought through yet. It's part and parcel of the sort of things we're looking at right now.
Fantastic. I noticed a number of august banking organizations on my Zoom camera. And Adam, your work for Deutsche. How did the banks cope with this mega challenge? Were they prepared?
Well, I suppose in short, probably not. Our setup in globally was more to accommodate working from home, and that was for a fraction of the employees. I mean, we have roughly about 100,000 internal employees and about 60,000 external consultants. So none of our setups in terms of VPN or remote, we also have VDIs in terms of remote desktops, were set up in a way that everyone connects at the same time for the same infrastructure. So I don't think we were prepared for this, but then obviously we very quickly scaled up all of our infrastructure. I think within a week we expanded all of our connections, VPNs, desktop, bandwidth. So we had little to no disruptions. I think the biggest disruptions was actually the outsourced phone capabilities that we have, which we were not able to scale up to the demand as quickly as we wanted to. So most of our meetings where we had multiple meetings, and we don't use Zoom, we used our own combination of video and external video providers. And that was a challenge for at least 3 to 4 weeks. But yeah, I think most of the challenges were on the technical side, very easy to fix with our partners. And then in terms of culture, I think depends on what division. IT, very easy to move to working from home. Productivity is pretty much the same. So everyone is quite happy. But then obviously if you look at more on the trading side, the money making, the front office, that's much more difficult because you have obviously the clients which you use to communicate face to face. So that was more challenging, and those are actually the stuff that we kept on site, about 100, 150, and also the supporting roles are going back first. In terms of the future, I think it's a very interesting question, and I'm afraid we haven't made any decision on that yet. It's all kind of up in the air. There's very much openness based on the experience we had in the past couple of months, that actually things work quite smoothly working from home for the majority of the cases. And just to give you some numbers, we work at the moment 95% from home. So from the 160,000 staff, it's 95% people work from home for the past 3-4 months now. And there is an open question whether, for example, IT should work from home 100%, so full time, whether we want to move back to kind of a mixed environment. But I think the consensus is definitely that we will not go back to the state that we were before. And that's a combination of cost savings, flexibility, etc. And I think someone mentioned just before, obviously there are also legal questions as well. So we had to amend our contracts that state specifically that even though you're expected to work from home, you are not allowed to leave the country of the contract that you're contracted with. So yeah, very, very interesting things. I think the technical questions are the easy ones, as long as you have the capabilities to scale up. And then I think it's very interesting to hear in terms of different sectors as well, what the future state will look like. I would assume it will be very much either a mix of flexible working or moving way more towards working from home than we did before.
Ritesh, from HSBC, I wonder if you could comment. You're a very large organization, very multinational. How did this move to home actually work out for yourselves, and what are the implications?
So I'm just moving out of the HSBC, but yes, such a large organization, quarter of a million people, 50,000 people in technology, and 5,000 people in the digital, which I was looking after. But the initial challenge was, as my colleague said from Deutsche Bank or others, the initial challenge was mainly about the capacity on the platforms and the access. However, on a normal day, we would see like around 10 to 15% people work from home. But we have anticipated the situation slightly. Obviously, no one could have been prepared for a situation, but we have anticipated because China and Hong Kong being the home market for us.
Yeah.
So we started preparing for that. So initial couple of weeks have been quite sketchy due to the network capacity and the VPN capacity, etc. And then we got used to it, and it was pretty okay. The challenge is like mainly, I would say, from the human perspective and the human interaction, as well as the way bank operates, that has impacted significantly. From operational perspective, from the technology and people, business is as usual. Yes, it will have a different impact in terms of the balance sheets and cost cuttings and the budgets and the reprioritizing what we were planning to do in next 12 to 24 months, which is up in the air slightly. So yes, as other colleagues have said, it is not going to go back to normal as it was. So things are going to stay in terms of working from home. It is going to throw a different challenge now, because earlier it used to be with the location strategy was a big challenge, where you're going to have your base, where you're going to have your teams. So the people who were very concerned and critical about the location. Now that's all up in the air because there are no boundaries. So we have seen that significantly, that it really doesn't matter where your people are based. We were quite initially, we were quite concerned with the increased productivity. It was good that we have seen the productivity, higher productivity, but at the same time, we were quite concerned as well because we knew that it is not a sustainable environment and the significant increase in productivity at the early stage. So we started more focusing on the people side, that and the mental well-being of the people. Though they are working from home, it became a norm that people were working for late hours and even over the weekends. So we started focusing on that. So yes, in the future, I'm looking at a different world, a slightly different world. I'm looking at more flexibility within the organizations and adaptability as well, and opening their doors for the different shows easily.
Thank you very much. If we
I'm just conscious of time, Roger. The more formal Q&A that we're going to have informally at 6:30. Our friend Adrian's with us just before 6:30, so I didn't know if you wanted to move on to the next, and then people can decide what they want to drink or consume from then on.
We need to finish the second bottle any second now.
Thank you, Sean. Yeah, I have the fun of then opening another 6 bottles of wine after this. So this is the hors d'oeuvres. So we have the Rioja Gran Reserva to have next. So hopefully, if you've opened it, good. If you've let it breathe, even better. If you've decanted it, then you're a star. So this Rioja Gran Reserva, Rioja is arguably Spain's most famous wine region, north central Spain, and Gran Reserva is the top of its tree in terms of quality level. So in Spain, Reserva and Gran Reserva mean something. In the New World, it might just mean that they're going to charge you a few more pounds for selling you the bottle. In Spain, it's all about how long the wine has been aged for and the quality of the wines that go into the bottle. So you start off with Vina Joven, which means young wine, doesn't see any oak at all. Crianza need to be at least 2 years before they're released. Reserva, better grapes in better years, need to be at least 3 years before they're released. And then top of the tree, the Gran Reserva. Every Gran Reserva must be at least 5 years old before it's released. This wine spent 2 years in oak barrels and then another 4 or 5 years before it was released. This wine at last year's Decanter World Wine Awards, not only was it voted best Rioja in show, not only was it voted best red wine in show, it beat 16,500 other wines to be voted the best wine in show. So it's a wine that hopefully you'll all thoroughly enjoy tonight, but it's a wine that if you hadn't just opened it, you could have enjoyed for the next 8 years. So it would be interesting to see how it develops. Okay, so with the Rioja, the main grape variety is Tempranillo. Okay, so this wine is 90% Tempranillo with a little bit of Graciano. So Rioja, on the nose for me, always characterized by a hint of vanilla, something slightly coconut from the oak, but then some nice fruit, earth, and something a bit more savory. Sometimes as it ages, you get some nice leather and tobacco, but it's not too jammy. You've got some nice fruit, you've got something which is quite earthy and quite savory. And then the key thing, especially for a Gran Reserva Rioja, why you pay the money for it is on the palate. When you have a Gran Reserva Rioja, you're looking for length of finish, you're looking for texture, and you're looking for a mellow mouthfeel. You're looking for something which, whilst you can feel the tannins on your gums and your cheeks, that it stays with you and it coats your tongue. It should be like putting on a favorite pair of shoes or slippers at the end of the day. It's something which is quite smooth, something you look forward to, and something that's rewarding. Something like this, for me, I'd look forward. Yeah, Baz, I think it was you that asked, would you choose your wine or your food first? In this case, I would choose my wine and be scrambling around the house looking for some lamb to cook with it. So the classic match to go with Rioja is lamb, okay? Roast meat or hard cheese. So manchego is obviously the classic match, being Spanish, but if you don't have any manchego around, then some vintage cheddar, something hard. When you're thinking about matching wine and cheese, match hard wines to full-bodied red wines and match white wines to softer cheeses. If you had this with some brie, it'll taste like chewing polyfill for about 10 minutes, so don't do it. Go with hard wines where you have some protein, softens the tannins in the wine, makes the wine seem softer and smoother as a result. How does this wine feel and taste, everyone?
Fantastic.
That's always a good comment, so fantastic.
Adrian, I have a question.
Yes.
I love red wine, but sometimes, well, most of the time it discolors my teeth and my lips. Why is this? And it only happens to some people and it does to others. So why is that?
So red wine, obviously to give it color. When you make a red wine, you use the skins to extract color and tannin. When you make a white wine, you leave the skins alone, you just use the juice, okay? The thicker the skin, the darker the wine, the bigger the wine. If you swirl it around your mouth, as you normally do in a wine tasting, it will get stuck on your teeth as well as your gums. So I would suggest you do that maybe for the first sip, but not for the rest of them. So try to preserve your teeth. Also, after tasting red wine, if you do have purple stained teeth, try to resist from brushing them. All you're going to do is book yourself an early trip to the dentist, because what you're doing, you're going to strip, there's going to be sugar, it's going to strip the enamel off your teeth. So some people are more susceptible than others, but it's just down to bigger red wines being darker in color. With white wines, the acidity and the sugar is still there, but you just can't see it. You can only see it with a red wine. Okay. So have something alkali, some cheese or something like that to neutralize the acidity before you decide to get rid of your purple stained teeth.
It's a good excuse to have some cheese. I'm
exactly.
happy with that.
Adrian, is the vanilla coming from the barrel?
Yeah, so in Rioja, vanilla and coconut, Rioja is normally aged in either American oak, which gives you coconut, and French oak, which gives you some vanilla as well. So it's that combination which gives you a slight creamy vanilla coconut aroma, and on the palate it gives the wine a smoothness and a softness and a richness. Unoaked red wines you don't see very often, but they tend to be quite light and quite bare. Most quality red wines will spend a year or two in oak, and that gives the wine some stuffing. It makes the wine rounder and smoother. And if you're good quality grapes, you can withstand 2 years in oak, and you can age for, well, it'll be 20 years by the time this wine is done, at least.
Adrian, I have a question.
Yes.
Not that I ever suffer from this problem at home. If you open a bottle of wine, how can you, well, if you don't finish it, how do you store it? How long can you store it? So I never have that problem in my house. I don't know how many of you out there
Baz
do,
was talking about when he's opened the second bottle of wine over enthusiastically, what does he do with it? So tonight everyone's going to have 3 wines open. So if you have the sparkling wine, ideally if you have a champagne stopper, then put that back in. If you don't, then try to cover it with something. So some people will swear that a silver spoon does the job. I'm not going to get into that argument, but if you believe in that, do that. But try to stopper it with something. It could be an old cork, an old port cork or something. With white and red wine, the younger the fruity of the wine is, the longer it will keep open. So put it in the fridge overnight, put the screw cap, put the cork back in. Tomorrow that Sauvignon Blanc will be fine. The day after it'll probably be fine. With a red wine, a big red wine like this will be fine for a couple of days. But if you're worried about your red wine, if you've had one before, put it in the fridge overnight. The colder you store something, the slower it'll develop. So even a red wine, put it in the fridge overnight, bring it out a few hours before you plan drinking it. It'll be fresher than if you hadn't done that.
Can I just say the spoon does actually work in a bottle of champagne?
There you go. So we have confirmation from Sarah that if you haven't got a champagne stopper, use a spoon.
It does work.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for that, Adrian. It's been very informative. And any questions that we have, if we pop into the chat, I'm sure we'll get answers to you post-event as well. So just wanted to thank Adrian for his stellar work.
You're welcome, Sean. Just before I leave, if you want to email me, adrian@wineandearth.co.uk, if you have any burning wine questions, then I'm happy to answer them. I'm going to drop off and talk some more about wine for the next 2 hours. Thank you all very much. Pleasure to meet you all, and enjoy the rest of the evening.
Thanks, Adrian.
Thank you, Adrian.
Thank you, Adrian.
Thank you, Adrian. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
We'll circulate Adrian's email to the group as well. I also wanted to say, obviously, I congratulated our friend on his wedding anniversary earlier, and I'm not excluding anybody here, but I know for a fact that it was Mark Gabriel's birthday yesterday, so I wanted to say a very happy birthday to Mark Gabriel. It's only because we speak to these, but I know both chaps very well. But if I'm not excluding anyone there, I just want to say a happy birthday for yesterday for Mark Gabriel.
Happy birthday,
Mark.
Happy birthday, Mark.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Glass of wine to raise.
I'm going to drag you kicking and screaming back to the subject again. I'm sure you'll continue to enjoy your wines, but I notice there's quite a number of law firms represented here, and I'd be interested to know again how law firms coped with the work at home. Did this limit your services?
Wine.
Were there any
there we go.
issues on employee security, etc., client security? Anthony, you seem ready to
Lots of wine is how we coped. I think what, in my experience, most law firms had got a good percentage of their staff who worked remotely from time to time. But very few law firms that had a large percentage of their firm working from home on a regular basis. I'm sure some of my esteemed colleagues will be able to either shoot me down in flames or verify that. We were very fortunate in that we issued out new Microsoft Surface devices right away across the firm very early this year, as part of a massive transformation that we've been undergoing for the last 12 to 18 months. I think most law firms are quite risk averse and traditional in their approach and like to see bums on seats. We're working in 6 minute units, and so time recording is everything. And I've always found it quite ironic. I've been working in law firms for the last 23 years, and whilst they're recording every 6 minutes, you'd have thought that they'd have a bit more trust as to what people were doing, but that hasn't been the case up until now. And over the last 3 months, they've just had to lump it. And what they've realised is that actually the people who work for them aren't just trying to skive off the whole time. They are actually doing the good quality work that they saw them doing in the office day in, day out. And I think it's the sort of culture and attitude to that presenteeism that is having the biggest kind of ripple around the law firms when it comes to culture. I mean, financially, because law firms have liked bums on seats, you've tended to get partners with big offices traditionally, and taking up lots of space in the city and lots of rent. So we're very fortunate. We've got a rent break clause coming up in quite a few of our places in the next 12 months, but that's not going to be the case for everyone. So I think it definitely differs from firm to firm, but wine helps because after a stressful day, it's nice to relax with a bottle of wine. And certainly, even though we had the vast majority of our firm who had the capability of working from home, lots of them hadn't done it on a regular basis. So we still had a huge peak in calls to our service desk from people who were having problems with their home Wi-Fi and things like that, despite the fact that they'd actually had the opportunity to test it and do lots of stuff from home previously. So yes, it was definitely a stressful start, but I think it's been a real boon for the IT departments of law firms because they're getting a lot of recognition now. And yeah, so that's my view on it.
Yes. Could I give another reason why, Anthony, I think it was quieter than it could have been for you? And that is, I say as British Telecom, what amazed me was I was raising with my procurement colleagues, why weren't our suppliers saying this is a force majeure part of your contracts? But none of them were. We've gone through all the COVID period without being told this is force majeure.
Well, I'll leave that to the legal teams.
Of course.
Nothing would surprise me. I'm sure you'll get plenty of lawyers spend a lot of time arguing about it if you engage them on it. If you
but I thought if this wasn't force majeure, then what is?
Well, yeah.
Actually, could I bring two other lawyers in? Richard, perhaps first. What was your experience? Were you prepared? Have you achieved some stability?
Well, I think we were prepared. I mean, we have an entirely virtual environment, so it was just a question of scaling up when it came to everyone working at home. So from a purely tech perspective, we were ready. It was very easy for people to move from mostly in the office to entirely at home. There's a few cases where we were short of equipment, and then there was a bit of a scramble round in those first few weeks to get equipment out to people who needed it. But I think overall we adapted and met the challenge fairly quickly, really. I think some of the challenges we've had, as I said in the chat, are around the junior end. It's not so much about people who are established in their roles. They've been able to adapt. They're competent. They can work unsupervised. But there's a number of people, and I have people in my team who are fairly new into their roles and who rely on that over-the-shoulder supervision. Yeah, they're being trained. They're still learning their trade. And we've, no secret really, we amongst many other law firms, we furloughed a lot of people in those kinds of positions simply because we weren't able to provide that level of support to them. So I get the argument that this is the new normal, and this is going to work for lots of people who are established in their teams, established in their positions and their careers. But I do worry about how we bring those junior people on, because we're so used to doing it in a contract situation. We're so used to doing it in a very direct supervisory way.
Thank you very much, Paul. What is your experience, and what advice have you got to offer?
Very interesting. I mean, I operate both as a consultant, and I'm in September going to be taking up the role as chief executive of a new law firm that's going to, basically driven by aggregation, we're going to be taking over a number of firms. And I think phase one was crisis, and actually, to be fair to the old LLP partnership model, and huge credit to the IT departments, they did a brilliant job, and people got up and running. And I think it's a sort of, Brits are quite good in crises. There was an enormous feeling of actually, yes, we will change. I mean, one managing partner said to me, if I told the partners to paint their front doors pink at the moment, they would do it. They'd want a good reason 3 months down the road, but at the moment, I'm getting dinosaurs to do things I've been talking to them for years about doing. I think we've now moved into the next phase, and I think a number of bits on that. One, how do you build a really cost-effective business model going forward? Because law firms are looking at a fall in revenue. One law firm I was talking to this morning, again about an M&A issue, was looking at a 25 to 30% fall in revenue for the next year. This is a regional firm, and that translates into a 50% drop in profit. Law firms always operate on this multiple. So you get 5% more revenue for a large firm, you get 15% more profit, and so forth. That's a real issue for a lot if you are a smaller, undifferentiated regional firm. It's a really big issue. I'm seeing a lot of CFOs keeping hold of the cash because they're concerned about lengthening payment periods from clients. So no partner conferences, of course, minimal travel, a lot of projects being put on hold. And people are really looking at two things. One, how do we change our business model? And we are accelerating a lot of trends that we were already seeing. The second bit is looking out for the opportunities, so that there are firms that will not exist in 12 months' time. And how do you get the firm that's got great lawyers but has just been poorly managed going into this? And the third bit is, what is the business model that will be a winner coming out of this? Because, for example, in winning new clients, really, really hard in this sort of environment. But what the good partners are doing is spending the time to talk to their existing clients and cross-selling and collaborating with other parts. So they'll talk fed up a client, and the client has more time to talk because they're not stuck in endless meetings. And they may say, well, we used you for litigation, but our problem at the moment is restructuring and employment. And the guy and the partner will say, well, actually, we've got a great employment team. So getting a larger share of the legal spend wallet of existing clients is going to be a really key thing. The law firms that work well together, and a lot don't, in terms of that internal collaboration, are certainly going to emerge as real winners, I think.
Thank you very much, Paul. You mentioned new business models, and I think we've just actually been conducting research within CIONET, and organizations are really torn today between, can we actually reinstate our existing model, make it a bit more flexible, a bit more agile, or do we really just have to grind it down and invest out at the edge, build new businesses that really are focused on modern digital principles?
Well, I think it's summed up by one quote that we were talking about the other day with some managing partners. If you want things to stay the same, we have to change.
I love that quote. Yeah, that's great. Ben, RPC is a well-known name to me. How have you been coping? And
actually fairly well. And so we did have a lot of agile working in the past. There were certain parts of the firm who wouldn't do it and who swore that their people could never work from home and it would be an absolute disaster. And then all of a sudden they did, and then we found they were actually doing more. They were more productive because they weren't having to commute and all the rest of it. And even those teams are now saying they'll never go back to how it was before. So it's been interesting to see from that point of view. I think also, in terms of where we're headed, I've only been with the firm since the beginning of the year. So 3 months into a brand new job, COVID hit, and so that's been an interesting challenge for me. And there's still plenty of people in the firm who I haven't met face to face and won't do for however long. But what's interesting is I guess I inherited an estate with a brief to try and modernize and move things to the cloud, and move as much to the cloud as possible. And I guess current circumstances mean that has even more momentum and even more support. So I'm finding things which I thought I might have had to fight for in terms of getting the budget. Before this started, actually, I'm being encouraged to do it. I'm getting the backing of the senior team and the budget I need for it. So I think there is a recognition that we probably won't go back to working how we did before. And the longer this goes on, I think the more chance there is of that not happening. But at the same time, we're conscious that you don't want people to immediately go back to working in the ways they were before if it doesn't happen in the not too distant future. So. Yeah, it's been interesting.
I think we have a gentleman from Costa, Phil Scully. I'd be really interested, Phil, if you're here to describe what it means to be out in the high street. And we've been talking about lawyers and government and everything else, but you guys are really in front of the public. How's life been for yourselves, and where does it take you?
Good evening. How's life been? I'm pleased I've got 3 bottles of wine to go through tonight because
sure.
it will net off my week and the caffeine intake. Look, it's tough. It's tough. I mean, we're not fully open. We're in the process of fully opening. We're learning a lot. I mean, we've got business in China, so they came out of lockdown earlier. They've gone back into limited lockdown in Beijing earlier. So trying to figure out learnings from that has been interesting. I have a team in China. Yeah, it's a different culture, but you throw a global pandemic into a business family situation with loved ones and children and elderly relatives. It doesn't matter whether you're Chinese, European, American, African. A lot of the behaviours are very similar, and I think that's what we're seeing in the UK. People are wanting click and collect, wanting delivery. It's not just a retail clothing and product based behaviour shift. It is a consumable on the move behaviour shift. Drive-throughs are doing a fantastic business because that's what people want to do. They don't seem to want to dwell. They don't want to touch. So we're seeing that those order channels that reduce queues, reduce dwell times, keep people's distance are going well. And contactless payments, reduction in cash. I mean, I don't know. It took 15, 20 years to get checkbooks out of circulation. We talk about accelerators. Maybe cashless society is accelerating as we speak because I don't want to touch coins, and I'm quite a cynic to some of these things sometimes. But if you know, I'm seeing black dots when I go to a cash point and I don't want to touch anybody else's coins, I can't be the only one. So you know, that changes, that fundamentally shifts retail. And then on top of all of that, we've got a government that keeps coming up with wonderful eat out to help out and VAT changes. And every time they come up with that, I have to have my team stand up overnight doing thousands and thousands of updates to tills and order points and mobile applications. So, you know, it is a relentless pace of change. You know, if you think you've got a plan, give it up. There's a wonderful quote from Mike Tyson. I think everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. Well, you know, week on week, it's not quite the punch in the face, but it is a fundamental shift. Make a decision, do something different. What does it do to the plan? And that's not crisis management anymore. That's just pivot, accelerate, deliver, pivot, accelerate, deliver. And I don't think that's going away anytime soon.
So I think you're really describing a world where you've got to be very agile. And I mean, we haven't really talked about IT organizations. We talked a lot about the business, but what effect is this having really on the way IT organizations work, the way they should work in the future?
I think agile's overused. It's like digital transformation. We've shown the gaps in the last 5 months in digital transformation and in agile. Right, it's more than just a website.
Yeah.
Agile is more than just a Scrum team hacking a mobile app. Agile is a mindset and a culture. And if your governance boards are 3 months apart, you're probably not going to be agile in terms of the decision making in the front of what we're delivering. So I prefer adaptive. I prefer, you know, our teams, our culture, organizations have to adapt, because I don't know what new normal looks like. I guarantee you're going to get 15 or 20 different answers on what that looks like.
Yeah.
From every, you know, one per person on this call. So you've got to adapt.
Sure. Any contributions here around, you know, how IT itself needs to change? I mean, we've talked about cloud, we've talked about virtual networks, virtual systems. What does the IT landscape look like in, you know, 2 or 3 years' time, and can we finance it?
So Roger, that's a really interesting question, and I think it depends on the type of market or domain that you're in as well.
Yeah.
Of really considering things like drone usage for surveying farms. So, you know, an inspector could drive up in his car and send a drone around rather than get up and walk around the farm himself. You know, we can inspect our rivers and, you know, flood levels using drones rather than actually physically send somebody out. And, you know, all of this was just talked about before, but now there's a real consensus that we need to move forwards with a lot of these, well, adoption of innovative technologies to deliver. So I don't think we can really predict what the future is going to look like at this stage. I think another 3 months of going in and out of lockdowns is going to change our environments quite considerably. At the moment, I think a lot of businesses are still thinking this is just going to go back to normal in a little while. And the reality of it is, even with the vaccine, we're still going to have a lot of these concerns going forward for at least another 2 years.
Yeah.
Can I add, Baz, that you made a really good example there where you're referring to agriculture, because I'm discussing with the European Union now and the European Space Agency that the UK gave a record amount of money last year to the European Space Agency, yes?
Yep.
And we're discussing with them farming of the future, where combine harvesters will have 4K cameras at the front, so it becomes a high-tech farming thing. And with my French and Italian family, I'm making the point we can also do something for corporate and social responsibility, because I know in France and Italy, and I'm sure the UK, the children of the farmers are leaving the farms because it's boring. They want to go to the big cities. But now we're moving farming to high-tech, using technology, using drones, using satellites with infrared to tell you what's happening to your crops. So the children will stay there because the farms become high tech.
That's a really good point, and I think a lot of that technology has actually been around for quite a while. I've looked into it for various livestock programs over the last 5 years. The biggest issue we have is our farms are in the hundreds of acres or 50 acres, as opposed to the tens of thousands of acres you get in America and Canada and in South America. That capacity to spend that much money to track and automatically manage harvesters isn't something that's affordable by our farmers at this stage. But yes, you're right. As this technology gets cheaper and gets more accessible, we would love to make more use of it. There's no need for us to send an inspector out to look at the level of water in a river. We can automate this. Just as farmers can have automatic sensors. By the way, I'm building one with my little 3D printer at home. That'll check soil humidity and temperature for farmers, so they can all have automatic watering systems and so on. So this is all fun. It's all innovative, and I think, as I say, we just don't know where we're going to end up in the next 2 years.
Yes, and you're so right, because ironically, I'm proving it in Argentina with companies like Fiat Agriculture to bring back to Europe.
Yeah.
Scott, I noticed we have Scott, who's in the salmon business. Has technology begun to impact on the way you manage your business and the business?
Yeah, we're highly regulated, and as such, we require to produce loads of data for CEPA, etc. We're massively engaging with AI. AI is pushing stuff up to the cloud for us. We've got 60 sites across Scotland, so we can then compare and contrast temperature, we can compare and contrast tide flows, and from that we can see how fast our salmon are growing, how well they're performing, and those different environmental factors. We have other things around about feeding, so we have cameras within the water, we can see the actual feed coming down, we have cameras tracking that, and that can automatically switch on the feed, can switch off the feed processes. That reduces the impact on the environment because we're not overfeeding the fish, underfeeding the fish. We get massive growth curves, and we can track those growth curves, so we can actually then, using artificial intelligence and machine learning, we can monitor the fish to see what best times they actually feed. So yeah, we're really engaging. This has been quite a new development in the last 2 or 3 years, and we've got massive investment in the Norwegian area, and they're really driving the way that technology is being implemented in the fish farming industry.
Thank you, Scott. I mean, it's really interesting what you and Baz have just said. I mean, to what extent has this crisis sort of diverted us away from new technologies, new capabilities, and just focused us entirely on survival, staying alive? Or are we able to draw breath now and actually go back to some of the innovations that obviously were taking place?
For us, it's been a benefit, and I say that with tongue in cheek. And the reason is that we suffer greatly for connectivity issues. And trying to get OpenReach to engage is being very difficult. But during the crisis, I think a lot of companies have backed off from projects that they would primarily be engaging with. Whereas we've been heavily investing and continue to invest throughout the crisis, meaning that actually we've seen time to delivery for our lines jump from maybe 2 years, and we're now all the surveys are rapidly taking place, and we're getting lines delivered within 6 months now.
Well, that sounds good news for you, BT. Renato, you're obviously doing a very good job here. I mean, how have you seen the world? I mean, as a massive infrastructure manager.
It's been quite amazing to see in the UK, we've had the really grassroots issue of the OpenReach people having to have the personal protection equipment, and also the health and safety training. But ironically, in the rest of the world, for the part of BT I am, which is global services, would you believe it's been so much easier because typically somebody else has provided the access to the network. So we've been dealing with the cloud network part of increasing access, providing more virtual private network licenses, and all of that has been done in software, no people, no hardware.
Interesting. So again, software-defined networks, presumably.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Really helped. I mean, again, I keep asking this question: is the technology ready to help and support IT as it evolves? I mean, a number of you talked about cloud. I'm sure that cloud has helped in the transition to home working. Software-defined networks. There's a whole bunch of stuff coming down the line. Are we ready to use it?
Yeah. And I would suggest yes, only because some of the projects I'm doing with software-defined network, for example, involve customers like HSBC, where we send to the addresses they give us a box, they connect it there, it sees the internet in any way it can, and then loads the configuration it should have for that location, or if it's the wrong place, it closes itself down and makes itself useless because it thinks it was stolen.
Wow. So that actually again raises an interesting point. Robin, you're in a firm that serves very wealthy individuals. Client data, client sensitivity is obviously critical. You pushed everyone into their homes. How do you manage security? How do you keep a watch on what people are doing?
Wow, that's a big question. I thought, yeah, I had prepared something different. I thought a couple of things that are different is in the IT infrastructure world is that our need for space has gone up. And that was something unexpected. So we're recording all of our morning meetings, etc., and they're all being made available to staff. So of course, you know, that's happening on a daily basis. So space has been eaten up hugely. And also projects in the company that involve myself, they've gone up. Like, I don't know if people are making work for themselves or what they're doing, but you know, now's the time where they want to work on projects. So I'm finding myself being really stretched because that's what, you know, they need input. For example, we're going to be moving to a new travel provider, travel management system, and nobody's traveling at the moment, but apparently it's a reasonable priority to get this onboarded. So yeah, that's what I'm all about. That's next on the list. But in terms of data security and keeping an eye on what happens, I can do that from home. All the systems are in place, and it doesn't matter whether I'm at home or in the office. I can still keep an eye on the data flows. The only thing that's obviously different is who people are sharing their house with, you know, that kind of thing. So I don't know if people, you know, are sharing it. Yeah, I mean, there's people at work who, you know, from all ages and backgrounds, and they might be sharing a house with other individuals, or they might be married to someone who works for a competitor. So yeah, that's just something the business has to take on as a risk. There's no choice at the moment. But going forward, absolutely. The CEO said after the 60-day mark of lockdown, he said, look, it takes 60 days to change your behavior, habits. Yeah, and he said, therefore, you know, going forward, we expect a new normal, which will involve flexible working.
Great quote. Yeah,
yeah, so that's where we're at.
Thank you.
What is it? Could I ask a favour? I mean, can you take a straw poll as to how many days people expect to be in the office going forward?
Absolutely.
3, I reckon. 2 to 3. That's all I'm expecting.
I was going to say 3. I'm only planning in on going Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. That's it.
Yeah, me too.
Or 3s.
And everybody else will plan not to go in on a Monday and a Friday. Yeah, come on, Anthony. You know
So
it's that.
that's
Let's not pretend.
that's really interesting. Just
We'll go down
before
from 8 to 3.
just before this the start of this COVID-19, we had to try and address and take some baselines on our network usage, and we found that on Friday everyone in government works from home. Yeah,
we have
the
a
VPN usage really didn't show that they were working.
We have a power app for it with a map of our offices, and you actually schedule yourself in with hot desks now.
There you go.
Tell us more, Keith. What's going on with yourself and your organisation?
Well, I think we had it the last time we were talking. We're sort of a little bit like Costa. We're a retailer, but we're also manufacturing. So I'm the CIO, but I assume the title of cyber risk officer as well. So I was delighted to hear what Robin said. People sitting at their kitchen table, which I am, with the Alexa in the background, which I don't have, and worrying about these kinds of things. But we're fully back in our retail environment at the moment. Our manufacturing held true because they were trying to facilitate, and they're India, South Africa, these places, trying to facilitate our e-commerce side of the business. So we were trying to follow through, and our warehousing and distribution was on a reduced scale. So we flipped over quite quickly, a little bit what Baz was saying. So we're sort of a mixture of everything and everybody. So I sort of agree that we had our things, but the last couple of weeks is I've been embedded on our risk register, trying to recalibrate it for the work from home people, because everybody is working from home now. Those that had desktops, I don't know who mentioned that, have laptops. Those had laptops are working away. We have a little few issues where the VPN pipe wasn't big enough, so we had to upgrade it to make sure that everybody could be accommodated. We have a little few issues where when they log in, that the group policy is taking care of itself, but the malware and anti-malware kicks in and is authenticated before they're allowed to log in, not the other way around. And then the risk register where we have, I don't know, something like Zoom, they were a tier 3 supplier. Now something like Zoom is now a critical supplier, so they're a tier 1 supplier, so we have to reevaluate them. So that's where I'm embedded in at the moment, because everything is working. The help desk settled down. I think it might have been Anthony who said they were meant to test their Wi-Fi's, but they never bothered. And the help desks, so we've, I'm sitting in Ireland at the moment because we have offices in Dublin and in London. Our help desk is in Cardiff, and they just got inundated with people going, my laptop isn't working. But it was because they weren't on their Wi-Fi, or the Wi-Fi wasn't good enough, because they had a contention ratio, because there was 3 people in the house sharing, who Robin said, that all decided they're working from home and they're on a house share because they were a junior, which Ian or one of the guys said there, I think, that there was a junior from the office working, and they were all sitting at home now sharing, while there was somebody gaming on an Xbox trying to download FIFA. So we had all of these issues, but we've sort of settled down. But the big thing to me, and I think it brings it back to Ivanti, is where we've gone back to, I've used the NIST framework, the CSF, and we've gone back to identify, which is asset management, and just try to get everything back on track, try to make sure everybody is using the right thing. And when we use our group policy for getting onto our network with our VPN, we use it's about security, it's about managing, it's about identifying who you are, what you are, and making sure you're the right person in the authentication in the right place, the whole lot. We have a piece of software that uses Active Directory to log your login, log your log out, that sends a report to HR for your timings. So because you're working from home now, you're a bit more flexible. So we can log your hours. You can go onto an internal website and you have a thing called Check My Hours that lets you see how many hours you did every day, and you get your flexi day out of that if it works out that you've made up the hours. So we are getting there. We've put in through, because we use Dynamics 365. If you have an E3 license with Microsoft, which is all our office staff or warehouse staff who will be on site, you will actually get the ability to go in and check yourself into a desk 2-3 days a week. HR are still going through what the minimum or what the scheduled times will be, and you can check yourself into hot desks, which will have a monitor, keyboard and mouse. The team are putting those in at the moment, and most of your general office suppliers now are actually doing this software as an office add-in. It's working, it's nice, and it's scalable. It's just a power up, and that's what we're using, and that's where we're at. Sorry if I've tried to talk quickly because I don't want to take up too much time, but that's roughly where we're at. One of the broadband is our issue.
Really? You have to talk to your friend at BT here.
Yes, yeah. Well, we've BT in the UK. We've different providers, so it's not a BT issue. It's just in general, because I'm sure there's such a demand now, and it's not just the line; it's contention on the line, not necessarily the line. So I can't blame Renato at all.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that about the log on, log off times. I had my guys, my dev guys out in India spend a couple of days working on that, and so we've got it. We're now logging when the screensaver kicks in as well. We had a couple of people on performance issues who would log on at stupid o'clock in the morning and log off at stupid o'clock at night, but actually did sort all in between because there's screensavers on. So
well, I have it down to logging in, logging out, and I can log all your hours. But I have where my help desk now will be sort of cut out, because I found the cheat, and no better man to find the cheat than myself. If I was to open up if I logged in at 8 o'clock in the morning and opened up a PowerPoint presentation on my screen, it'll keep me logged in all day. And I'm sure there's better than me to find that one out. So I have to find a workaround for knocking them out if they leave a PowerPoint presentation open all day.
Or they could just buy a jiggler device which moves the mouse fractionally every second and stops it from turning off. There's a million ways around this sort of thing.
Yes.
I have a quick cue.
Yes,
if I can.
please.
How many of you actually know how to optimize your home Wi-Fi, for example? That you can actually have more than one channel, that you can, move it across from the standard channel that is shipped out by your providers, so you're not sharing the same channel as 30 other people on your street. How many people actually have ever looked at and understand how they could optimize this?
Well, I have a Meraki Wi-Fi, so.
But this is the question about how far is the reach of IT in an organization.
Yeah.
And how far does our responsibility go? So I would argue that's not what I'm paid to do. I'll give you some advice and hints and guidance, and actually we run all sorts of, we have little webinars and drop little vignettes in just to keep people going. But it's how far does our responsibility go? Because I can't be held to account when the broadband in the Cotswolds falls over and my people can't get online.
No, I totally agree with you, Mark.
And that's going to be the real challenge, Baz. It's going to be how do we continue to, for us to continue to meet our KPIs, be seen as delivering value and all that good stuff, versus the infrastructure of our respective sort of geographical areas and how that works. Because when this all kicked off in the early days, I was having all sorts of trouble with our Shanghai office. Could I do anything about it? Not at all. Even if I spoke to China Telecom, were they interested? Not at all. So very much, what's our reach? And I know all of my esteemed colleagues on this call will be having these discussions, but how far do you push the boundary of what it is we're trying to deliver on, and what it is where we're held to account? Because that's going to be a real challenge.
So
We're looking at Wi-Fi in a box as an alternative for our users, and then we're categorizing our users, obviously.
So you provide the
we provide the broadband, yeah. So
interesting,
and it's a 4 or 5G connection. So we're looking at that. So we're testing that at the moment, because there's so many variables when we utilize their connection. Where when we take control of the connection, is that worth the? So we're running a logarithm against the productivity and the loss of productivity.
So I don't think we'd go as far as taking ownership of their connections and putting these in. However, I do think the reality is, though it's their IT, and I agree with you, Mark, there is a reach question here. I do think the sheer number of calls we get and complaints we get about the slowness of our software and everything else, most of these are really down to poorly set up connections at home. And actually, I think as an organization that we would benefit of spending a few £1,000s on some online training courses teaching people how to configure their IT at home, and make that available to our staff. Again, without taking ownership or anything else, but to educate them, because I can almost bet most of you on this call didn't realize you could change your channels on your home Wi-Fi to be different to your neighbors. So you won't have as many clashes with your internet and other such things. So I think
I think it's also about, particularly for families who've got kids at home and kids who are either learning online or using Netflix, throttling the kids' connections and preserving your own connection. Most people wouldn't know where to start with that. And I agree with Mark entirely. It's not our responsibility. It's not an IT department's responsibility to do that, but it's in their interest, absolutely, to provide some guidance on it to help people to do that, to prevent those calls coming in and to improve their efficiency and productivity.
Yeah,
it's quite difficult, isn't it? Sorry to interrupt, but I think, Phil, you were raising your hand. Were you wanting to?
Yeah, so the difficulty is from an education sector. I'm FEHE, so we have 16 to 18, but we also have degree level and everything else, and we're a public sector, so we'd certainly face something similar to Daniel in Kingston, but even more so because our learners are that bit younger. So in my home, in my Wi-Fi, I've already split the 2 and 5G. I've switched the channels, but to explain that to staff, what I will kindly call legacy staff or super legacy staff who've been here since we were a polytechnic, college, whatever we were, is one thing. But then also when you're dealing with then trying to explain that to your users, in our case, quite often they are, for want of a better phrase, children in a parent's home. So then you've then got the disconnect to parents who actually run everything. And then the difficulty is if you make a recommendation in that environment, then effectively you need to also troubleshoot. So whilst we've got our firewall has created a little bit of client software that can sit on their home connection and expand the protection to anyone at home. But the problem is we have to then explain to essentially either a load of 16 to 18-year-olds or their parents, and there's the family dynamic between children and parents, and to try and get that installed properly. But because we're recommending it, if the problem is at their end, you can't turn around and say, no, you're putting that password in wrong, or actually, no, you're doing this wrong, because ultimately, if they're not, we have a thing where basically if you have a cup of coffee and you knock it on the keyboard, it's IT's fault. But when there's a kind of levels of separation, it's very easy to kind of point the finger, and it's a bit of a Pandora's box, as it were.
Nigel,
Sorry, guys. I'm just aware of the time, and we've sent out the links for the most valuable participant, which some of you have filled out already, which is great. And I said I'd update you later. But if you can cast your eyes to your phone or even to the private chat that would have been sent to you, that would have been great. And I'll allow Roger to carry on with the conversation. But if you can have a look at that, because we'd love to obviously get some great feedback from you guys and continue and have great events, but also announce the most valuable participant at the end of the event.
So while you're doing that, Nigel, I'm looking at you. You've heard a lot tonight, and I'm sure you've heard much of this before. But what's the sort of response and opportunity for partners such as yourselves to essentially fill some of these gaps? And I am really interested in how far organizational IT goes, and who fills the gaps where they don't go. So do tell us what your views are.
Gosh, yeah. So a great discussion, actually. Interesting hearing a lot of common themes here, and also, from my business, I run a software business here in Europe, and we are, even for an IT company, you expect us to have all the latest and greatest. Yes, majority of people work from home before. We have struggled in this whole process as well, getting everyone set up, and also this the whole responsibility piece as to are we the broadband discussion that we're having now, and that's what we're finding a huge challenge. The piece that I didn't take into account and is interesting to hear is part of what we do as an organisation, as IVANTI. We provide a service management help desk solution, and one of the things that we found right at the beginning was that some of our projects that we've got with organisations such as yourself just escalated. Remote working, laptops, how do you manage those devices? How do you make sure they're secure? Well, we have stuff to do that. And all of a sudden we found projects that didn't exist become available. And within 4 weeks, we were selling stuff to people that weren't even on the radar. And that's an incredibly short time scale. But then there are other projects that went completely on hold. Service desk, ITSM, the whole requirement to look at a help desk tool where people were probably doing that before just went on hold, and we're still seeing that the case now. What we have found is the escalation or the speed of decision making has, I think Baz was talking about this in the government to some extent. We have seen projects escalate in approval and budget allocated very quickly, which is interesting dynamic, because I know how hard it has been for IT or IT departments to get budget approval from CFO. Well, those have escalated and have moved really quickly, and that's interesting to see. What we are struggling on is moving forward. It's just interesting hearing as to one of our key customers. I'll mention them because this is out in the news, and this is not a surprise here, which is Fidelity Insurance. They have 4 offices in London, and they are closing 3 of those offices and keeping 1 open, because what they have found is that remote working is working, and actually in a lot of cases people are being more productive than they were before. So as an organisation where we spend on time and effort, we're having to adapt on some of the technology and where we develop some technology faster than others because of the way the climate is changing, and that's what's interesting to see and hear in some of the discussions today. But yeah, no, it's been very good, a real eye-opener, and yeah, brilliant.
Just as we close up, there are a couple of people who haven't contributed yet, who I'm sure would like to do so. Mark, Gabriel, you have clearly been in the front line in the NHS. Do tell us how that's been for you.
It's been challenging, as everyone would expect. One of the strange things about it is suddenly money's become available, and with that, the expectation from IT departments that we just make things happen. Here's the money, go and get on with it. So some of the challenge around that is actually keeping people motivated and available to do the work, and actually prioritising around what's important and what suddenly becomes vanity projects. So there's also is that fear at the back of people's minds is money's going to run out sometime soon. So what can we get done while the money lasts? So some of those challenges, yes.
Are you winning, Mark? I mean, given the importance of technology in the NHS today, do you think
it's a refreshing change to see money being made available. administration. The NHS runs on red tape and coffee. Not so much coffee, more red tape. But as a result, it's very hard to get things moving. So you can wait long periods of time to actually make things happen. One of the very few benefits of this pandemic is the fact that those administration problems have gone away, and we've been allowed to just get on with it.
Excellent. Jamie, would you like to give us a perspective from your own point of view?
So Care Quality Commission obviously regulates for all health and social care outlets, hospitals, dentists. I mean, we faced a massive challenge in order to continue regulating the health services with the pandemic sending inspectors. We're very fortunate, the big program that I've been overseeing, part of what's called Digital Foundations program, a large transformation for Care Quality Commission, moving all of their services out to Azure and out to Oracle Cloud. But fortunately, back in October, we moved all of our email and data sharing out to OneDrive and out to Office 365 services, Exchange Online, SharePoint Online. So we're very fortunate that we'd started to embrace the use of Teams across the organisation. The nature of CQC or Care Quality Commission is that it's very dispersed. So we were used to remote working. 2/3 of the organisation of roughly 3,500 staff are remote workers due to the nature of visiting, outreaching parts of the UK to go and do their inspections. So we were fortunate that we had already done our big transition to 365 services in October. Fortunately, and then I think there's a degree of courage that the exec believed in us and the big program that we're running, we carried on through the pandemic, and we've now transitioned over 24 core line of business services out to Azure, out to Oracle, integrated those through software-defined networks with the help of Vodafone. We've implemented a new service desk in that pandemic period using ServiceNow. We've rolled out a new security operations center, again, all through the use of collaboration tooling of Teams. I never thought that the program could deliver during that start of that period when you thought normally we're in workshops, we're doing whiteboarding sessions, and then we instantly had to switch across to using all this collaboration tooling, sharing documentation, and it was just a big transformation internally of how we operate and work. I think I've heard a few colleagues on the call contribute to the fact that you do end up working long hours. You sit there and you start at 7:30, 8 o'clock, and then you're being told, by the children, Dad, you've been in there for 12 hours. You've not come out yet. They've slid slices of toast under the door. But you do, because you don't have those natural distractions of going out and buying a sandwich or getting a Costa coffee or one of the competitors. You don't have those natural breaks of getting up to go to the vending machine in the office and having the occasional chat. So everything has to be planned. But the change in the regulatory was immense. I mean, I wasn't part of the program, but the regulatory team transformed the way they did regulations within 7 days. Wow. They changed the systems. They brought in new Microsoft Dynamics. They re-engineered everything so quickly, and now they've got the foundations to build forwards. Everything's cloud orientated. The agility's there for them to build quick and fail fast on the new system that they're starting to deploy. So again, they were fortunate that we'd already started that big transition back in October with the collaboration tooling, with the teams, building that culture of those tools at that stage when the pandemic hit. So quite fortunate.
Jamie, do you think your staff are becoming more IT literate? I mean, have they had to really grapple with this? I mean, we've mentioned this whole issue of IT literacy before, and Baz certainly mentioned it. Is this still a big problem here? I mean, clearly it's an age-related problem, probably.
There is an aspect of embracing the new technologies. I think once, certainly the staff that I have across the organisation, once they saw the benefits of the technology, the ability to work on a document collaboratively rather than passing it one to another to spend, a day each person reviewing it or updating it, to actually work on a document together as a team and view it and update it dynamically. Once they started to see the opportunity there, they saw that this was a good thing to start to understand further. So they have been embracing it. The instance of being able to quickly get hold of someone through the use of, we use Microsoft Teams, the ability to quickly look up someone's available, that's presence awareness, and quickly get hold of them rather than picking up a phone or trying to find their name in a soft phone. It's all dynamic, it's all instant. And the use of, again, I talked about document sharing, the use of collaboration tooling and working on documents together. It really was powerful throughout the whole of that transition period. But again, it was the long hours that you don't realize you're doing. You're sat there and you don't realize you're putting in so many hours until you start to see the sun go down.
So Jamie, I'd like to share something with you on that point. I've been working at home for nearly 3 years now, and at the end of the first year, I actually had to go see my boss and say to him, "Look, my arse hurts because I've been sat on it so long." I don't know how he took that, but it literally was because you spend 12 hours, 10, 12 hours a day sat there and you don't move. You don't get up, you don't wander around to get a coffee or anything. You just sit there. And yeah,
As
not
I have
good.
a lot of sympathy right now. I can share the pain. I'm just thinking, John from Advance. So, what are you taking away from this evening?
Well, interesting. I'm a dairy farmer's son and working in Zephyr, and I'm also like to keep my hand in terms of both coding, etc., and configuration. So, to the point of do people know how to optimize their own broadband, etc., then I would, I'm in the camp that expects any CTO or CIO to be able to not just do it themselves, but advise others on best practice. That might be a retro, but that's that. And hence the having moved all the firmware of my own 4 access points to OpenWRT, would expect us all to be considering similar and/or in the variants of SDN. To the other point, I always come back to the point of this thinking, well, if we're not careful, one modus operandi is to bound your scope of what you do to IT, whatever the role of IT is, or security, whatever, to protect, to make sure you're doing your bit well. That just continues to feel completely wrong.
Sure.
In the premise of, we're here to be a major part of the business. So, the business I'm in, we are a software provider. So, effectively, without me and my team in R&D, the 700 engineers, etc., there is no business. But I would say, even when I was CTO of HMRC, I was measuring my team effectively on the cost of self-assessments. Now, my IT team in self-assessments were doing things in small pence per transaction.
Yeah.
The paper versions were way more expensive. It wasn't IT doing it for the self-assessment department. It was the cost of a self-assessment. And I just continue to think, no matter what we do, it's the mindset of what we're trying to achieve in the first place, not I'm doing the IT bit for somebody else. It's I'm doing it for an outcome.
Yeah, we could certainly explore that topic, but that's for another time. But I absolutely agree with you. And how do you,
Roger? Could I make a point?
Yeah.
And it's something that I just want to pick up on with John. And it was something I was going to say about users using their broadband. Yeah. And it's about, if you buy a car, you need to know how to drive it. Yeah. And I think it's a shift in users and the next generation of people knowing how to use Facebook and Instagram and Wi-Fi's and all of this. I have 4 sons, and it's just, you've actually touched on a nerve. My second son is down milking calves at the moment. And he's going to come home this evening and he's going to reconfigure the broadband, and I'm not going to figure out how he done it. and I'm a CIO. And,
exactly. No, I hand out very generous presents to my kids.
So
be the home
The user
CIO.
should know how to, because the 7 billion is on the earth and there's somebody to replace them that will do the job or whatever job they're doing and configure their laptop. And it's not the IT department's job to teach them how. It's their job to know the device they have and how to use it. And it's not our job to teach them.
Sure. Can I, just rounding up, because I know time is pressing, anyone else here who's not been able to contribute? So, Ian, I know you've been sitting very patiently and not said much, but you've been chatting in the chat room. So
yeah, no, like I've been quite restrained. I've got nearly 3 mostly full bottles of wine to enjoy. Thanks very much for a lovely, very lively discussion. Actually, I had a minor victory in lockdown. The Wi-Fi conversation amused me slightly. I decided I was going to get Sonos installed in all my rooms, and therefore I need to have reliable Wi-Fi without these shady Wi-Fi extenders. So I installed a Wi-Fi mesh network. I can't imagine how it would have gone down if I was asking an IT team. The other thing, though, it really resonates with the IVANTI talk about how to manage all the endpoints and the complexity, because I was very happy to have just got the museum to the point in February when I was finishing there that they were ready for what we didn't know was going to happen next, the lockdown. So you just have to plow through this and get that right, don't you, to be able to get onto the next levels. But thank you so much it's a great evening. Very nicely hosted as well, Nigel and Sean and Roger. Nice to see you.
Jonathan, Oliver, you again, any takeaways from your listen very patiently tonight? So.
Yeah. Thank you, Roger. Well, I implemented a remote working program about 5 years ago, so I had the kind of luxury of doing it proactively instead of reactively. So I just want to share a couple of points which really drove that initiative without COVID, because this would provide further impetus going forward. And one of them was cost-effective scalability of operation. So having multiple employees, sharing a desk and scaling that up, so you end up starting off with a 50% ratio and going. So real estate cost reduction, global talent acquisition and retention. So being able to recruit the best people in the world without having to have a local office, that was a key objective. And also, coming from a software sales background, the penetration of new markets without infrastructure, so without offices. If people can work effectively remotely, all you're doing is sending a laptop to a few sales guys, you can really start to penetrate new markets.
Yeah.
So just some other ideas about thinking about how these things can help outside of the current kind of business continuity issue.
Thank you.
Jonathan, can I just pick up on something there? We're still talking about sending desktops out to our users. Well, that's, I tend to think of it, we've got some tactical work we've got to do right now just to get past this COVID stuff. We've got the 5-year plan where we're still sending out laptops and everything else, but sooner or later we're going to go down to the end user device mentality, where people bring their own laptops, their own devices, they can use what they want. And slowly but surely, even government is moving towards that, but it's just not something we're going to implement, desktop as a service and other such things, or bring your own device things. We're starting to implement it, but sooner or later, that's where we're going to end up. So people really are going to have to learn how to manage their own IT effectively.
And it's a bit like Groundhog Day. There was a cycle like that maybe up to 10 years ago. I don't remember, bring your own devices, but actually, these things always go in cycles, don't they?
Indeed.
And last, but by no means least, Natasha, you've again gone through 2 sessions with me this afternoon. And Natasha is a very senior executive at Salesforce. I know that Salesforce has been very well equipped, actually, to work in a distributed environment. But how has it felt? You were with Deutsche before that, so very
with Deutsche for 8.5 years. You're right, Roger. Today has been a marathon because we had about 20 people on the call just prior to this. And I think actually it very much reflected what we discussed now. We are all kind of in the same shoes, and we certainly see our customers that are focusing on the execution, focusing on preparation for the things, for the new kind of normal. And we're also seeing that there is a lot of pressure to move to the digital space, and COVID kind of accelerated that. So we're trying to help our customers from that perspective quite a lot. But what we're seeing that being in the cloud and being, you know, when I compare my previous work in the bank, and I think Deutsche is quite actually well equipped, being in the technology company has been quite helpful, because for us it was quite a seamless transition. And I know that some companies are enjoying that, and it was almost like a no event. But I think it's also the cultural thing, because a lot of companies like maybe post office and some others, they are not used working from home, and therefore, or some banks are not expecting their employees to work from home. So that cultural shift is also quite important. And I just wanted to say thank you very much for a fantastic session. I have to say that I'm not kind of a big drinker of wine, but Rioja was excellent. So Sean, I know you were wondering sort of why I accepted, because I don't drink. Well, I thought I will start now. Maybe it's a good time to start. So thank you very much, everyone.
I'm sure someone else will help you out, Natasha.
Yes, my husband is very happy.
Thank you for that, Natasha, and sorry to just cut you off there, Roger. I'd just like everybody just to look again, maybe in their private chat or at their phones, and complete for MVP. We're literally a couple of people away from announcing that, and thank you very much again. But I'll hand back to the very capable hands of Roger Camras.
So I think really just from a sponsor's point of view, Nigel and Sarah, thank you so much for sponsoring this. I hope you've got as much out of it as I think we all seem to have. My mind is buzzing at the moment. It's just really a question of where to begin. But you know, as a change junkie, I've just loved this last 6 months. Long may it continue. It's really got a lot of traditional ways of doing things washed out, and I think we're a lot better, a lot leaner, a lot more agile as a result of what's taking place. However, the next 12 to 18 months could be quite difficult. The cost is going to come back to haunt us. But from a digital point of view, you can just see how digital leaders have leapt ahead and really have had a fantastic time. Is Amazon going to be a $2 trillion company? That's the big question on the street at the moment. So, any closing remarks from yourself, Nigel or Sarah?
No, just appreciate the time. I mean, as you know, Roger, and Sean, we got together at the beginning. I wasn't sure about this type of event. You know, so many people sit in front of screens all day long, and just to try and keep them a little bit longer. Now, it has helped with wine, but the discussion has been brilliant and a real opener. Yeah, so appreciate the time, everyone, and thank you ever so much for joining us, and Roger for sharing it. Thank you.
Pleasure. So, Sean, I think we probably ought to put people.
Of course, absolutely.
Go to their families, as you say. They don't. My backside is getting sore as well. I've been sitting for far too long today.
The suspense is killing us. So thank you to all that have made contributions. Even the link is still open if you want to give us valuable feedback on the actual event itself. We usually do it by third, second, and first, but I think on this occasion we'll do second, and because there's so many third places as well. Everybody's great. Everybody's a winner, of course. Joint second is Adam Ravitsky from Deutsche Bank, great man, and Robin from Saracen and Partners. So congratulations to those, although there were no prizes, unfortunately. The event itself. We've got a joint first as well, and it's that man Baz from DEFRA, great man himself. And
thank you all.
Fully Renato from BT.
Oh,
So
very
a
good.
big congratulations to these guys. Joint
Thank
first. We won't split the prize. We'll get the equal charitable donation that we promise up front, because charity is obviously suffering at the moment. So we'll be in touch post event to check out the charities of your choice and make that donation on your behalf. So well done, those guys, those gentlemen, and also, of course, people that became third, and also Adam and Robin for coming second. Nobody's a loser.
Thank you very
all.
much.
As always, it's been a great event.
Thank you.
Super nice. Thank you very much. Brilliant.
Great, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Nice meeting you all.
Thanks all.
Appreciate your time.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks all.
Be well.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.